The Great Ruler Episode 127 Explanation. Mu Chen and Luo Li's figures traveled like fishes swimming in the chaotic sea of judgment. Their silhouettes were extremely agile as they instantly flashed, accelerating their speeds at the same time as they dodged the endlessly appearing spiritual energy vortices. However, the pressure from the chaotic ocean was simply too powerful, as any action would exhaust much more spiritual energy compared to outside. Thus, even the condition of Mu Chen and Luo Li was greatly reduced from the high depletion. Sweat started to form on the forehead of those two, but the two of them still kept high concentration as they didn't dare to loosen up, as the number of spiritual energy vortices was constantly increasing in numbers. Furthermore, the frequency of them appearing was also increasingly faster, making it inscrutable. The moment they fall into a spiritual energy vortex, even if they could break free from it, it would still exhaust a large amount of their spiritual energy, and the end of this sea of judgment still couldn't be seen. The moment their spiritual energy was fully depleted, it was basically impossible to advance any further. Poof! Another spiritual energy vortex with the size of around 100 feet appeared on the right in front of them. The vortex was spinning as though it was like a mouth of a savage beast that was trying to devour the two of them. Black lightning exploded off the surface of Mu Chen's body as he flashed past it at lightning speed, dodging the range of the vortex. Whereas Luo Li stood on the Luo God Sword as piercing sword intent was being emitted, the sharpness of it even tore apart the spiritual energy, creating an empty space which allowed her to travel through. After dodging that vortex, Mu Chen lightly spat out a mouthful of air. After maintaining this for half an hour, his body was getting more and more used to the spiritual energy pressure. But even so, despite the strength of his physical body, he felt faint stinging pain on his skin, which the rest was probably withstanding with their robust spiritual energy. But even so, it wasn't a permanent solution, as he could sense that the surrounding pressure was rapidly getting stronger and stronger as time passed. Furthermore, they did not dare to use any intensive method when resisting the pressure, as the spiritual energy here was extremely chaotic. The instant there was an intense spiritual energy fluctuation, it would only fuel a larger vortex. Thus, they were all exceptionally careful as they advanced. The spiritual energy pressure here is getting stronger, perhaps the exit will appear soon. Luo Li spoke in a soft voice as she moved closer to Mu Chen. Even with their strength, it was getting hard to endure the spiritual energy pressure. However, the 5 great deans would not have set up a test that exceeded their limits. Otherwise, it was basically impossible for anyone to escape the Sea of Judgment. Mu Chen lightly nodded his head. He shifted his gaze in an instant, looking a short distance away at his left and right, where Ji Xian, Wen Qingxian and Xue Tianhe were rapidly advancing. Due to the reason of the vortices becoming more and more densely packed, the distance between the 5 of them was also pulled closer. Wen Qingxian also took notice of them, as well as she waved her hand towards their direction with a charming smile on her face, which was extremely attractive. Luo Li returned her smile, and so did Mu Chen. The silhouettes of the 5 people had turned into streaks of light as they rapidly advanced with all sorts of methods. But, generally speaking, there wasn't a considerable distance between the 5 of them as they chased after one another. Mu Chen had also exerted his lightning god's physique to his limits, as black lightning was constantly flickering on the surface of his body. However, the lightning did not last for a long time, before it was suppressed back into his body by the powerful spiritual energy pressure, sending piercing pains to himself. In the beginning, the piercing pain made Mu Chen feel extremely annoyed, since it prevented him from being focused on sensing those vortices that instantly appeared, causing numerous situations where he was nearly sucked into one of those spiritual energy vortices. However, that frustration only lasted for a brief moment, before he was startled when he vaguely felt a sour numbing sensation from the piercing pain. It was similar to when he was refining his physique with lightning. Thus, he felt fine increments in the strength of his physique from the sour numbing sensation. That discovery made him rather startled, and after further examination, he understood what was going on. It turns out that when the black lightning on the surface was being pressured back into his body, the lightning would travel through his muscles along with the pressure. It was precisely this refining method that made him feel the sour numbing sensation. So that's how it is. Mu Chen suddenly saw the light of it, as he never expected for the pressure to have such a miraculous effect. I can use it to refine my physique a little to increase my strength. Mu Chen's heart moved as he intended to try and use this energy to increase his strength a little. Thinking about it, he no longer hesitated as he slightly focused and loosened up his body to resist the spiritual energy pressure. Just when Mu Chen was gradually submerging into his mind to use the pressure to refine his body, he failed to notice that as Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe were dodging the vortices, they were secretly getting closer to them. They got closer very faintly to the point that even Luo Li had not noticed them as they had been traveling at high speed trying to dodge the endless spiritual energy vortices. Thus, when Luo Li started to notice that Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe had been getting closer and closer to them, they were already 100 feet away from them. Caution rose in Luo Li's eyes. Regarding being cautious, she wasn't any inferior to Mu Chen. After all, she was the next empress of the Luo god clan, regardless of anything, thus, her guard for others was only superior and not weaker to Mu Chen. But, clearly, Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe came prepared as they smiled the moment they saw the caution in Luo Li's eyes, except for the fact that their smiles were a little vicious and eerie. Boom! Boundless spiritual energy burst forth from the two of them in a near instant. Due to the movement of their spiritual energy, the Sea of Judgment within 1,000 feet in radius started to go violent. The spiritual energy liquid in this region was extremely violent to begin with, and due to the commotion, it was like adding oil to the fire as an area of 1,000 feet in radius started to tremble. Buzz! Buzz! Spiritual energy fluctuations rippled out as a colossal vortex was quickly forming, the size of it nearly spread out to this vast region. Luo Li's face changed at this moment. Whoosh! However, before she could take any action, two surges of spiritual energies swept out from Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe's hands. However, the two surges of spiritual energy wasn't aimed at Mu Chen or Luo Li, but on themselves. Boom! Boom! Spiritual energy exploded as a dozen vortices were quickly forming around Mu Chen and Luo Li, instantly engulfing them. Furthermore, due to the reason that the vortices were too close to each other, they were rapidly fusing together, forming into a gigantic vortex. You guys! When Qingxian noticed their actions at this moment, and her face changed. The size of the spiritual energy vortex was too big that it nearly engulfed all of them. Rustle! Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe retreated, and at the same time, they were constantly flicking their fingers as numerous spiritual energy waves were shot out, making this already violent region even more dreadful. At this Sea of Judgment, the spiritual energy was exceptionally sensitive and violent, adding to the fact that they timed their actions at the right time and acted out without any hesitation when Mu Chen and Luo Li were in the most sensitive area. The two of them were extremely vicious as they unleashed the spiritual energy in their bodies without any restraints, causing the size of that vortex to be well over 1,000 feet in radius, forming a super vortex. Furthermore, all five of them was in the range of the vortex. However, Mu Chen and Luo Li were in the central area of it. Let's go! Seeing as the spiritual energy vortex was formed, Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe both made a grasp with their hands without any pause as an ancient jade appeared in their hands, before immediately crushing them. The two ancient jades were crushed as the space around the two of them faintly distorted, and in a flash, their silhouettes disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already 1,000 feet away and dodged the engulfing radius of the super vortex. Clearly, the two of them were well prepared. At the same time, when Qingxian glanced at them in hatred as she formed seals with her hands. Golden light spread out and instantly formed into large golden wings behind her. Boom! The wings flapped as her speed accelerated, escaping the restriction of the super vortex as she flew out. Her position was towards the edge of it, and thus, she didn't have to spend too much energy to escape from it. When she escaped from it, she anxiously looked at the center of the vortex as the two silhouettes were becoming more and more blurred. Mu Chen, who was still submerged in his mind, was startled awake in the central region of the vortex. He looked around and instantly understood what was going on as his face turned dark. Those two fellows have not given up their vicious designs. What should we do? Luo Li had constantly been resisting the terrifying suction force coming from the super vortex as she spoke towards Mu Chen in an anxious tone. If this goes on, we'll be sucked into it. Mu Chen deeply inhaled a mouthful of air as his black pupils were filled with chill. It's already impossible to resist the suction force, and if this goes on, we'll be finished. Mu Chen continued further, I'll send you out. Luo Li was slightly startled as she bit her rosy lips, you still have a fight with Ji Xian, and you shouldn't be absent from it this time. So I'll send you out." As she spoke, she held onto Mu Chen's wrist, but before she could exert any force, Mu Chen flipped around and held onto hers instead as a smear of a smile appeared on his face. "Indeed, this battle belongs to me, but trust me, I am not that weak, wait for me to come out." Spiritual energy exploded from Mu Chen's palm as the force pushed Luo Li out. The girl's crystal-clear eyes were staring at Mu Chen, before she clenched her teeth in the end as her foot tapped on the empty ground beneath her. A torrential piercing sword aura burst out of the Luo god sword. The sword aura wrapped around her silhouette as it tore through the layers of spiritual energy liquid and escaped the super vortex. When Luo Li escaped from the super vortex, Mu Chen's figure was sucked into the spiritual energy vortex from the dreadful suction force as he disappeared. That heart-stirring scene in the Sea of Judgment was clearly shown on the surface of the mirror as innumerable students had their eyes widened from the sudden changes that followed with an earth-shattering commotion. That Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe are so vicious. What vicious method, and with that, Mu Chen is actually eliminated, he was a potential champion. It can't be considered vicious. After all, Dean Qianxing had mentioned before that any means can be used. Mu Chen can only blame his own carelessness. But there's no honor in winning through this method. What a pity. Countless clamors rose, some showed disdain, and there was some showing support. In an instant, this vast space became rowdy. That Ji Xian is really shameless. Naturally, the students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy were the most enraged as every single one of them had an ashen expression from anger. Originally, their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy had the advantage as Mu Chen and Luo Li still remained, but now that Mu Chen was being schemed at, only Luo Li remained, thus, their advantage no longer existed. What despicable fellows! Yuxi raged as her face was filled with anger. Yi Qingling and the rest softly sighed. Who could have expected Ji Xian to be so despicable to attack at such a moment? However, they too understood that it wasn't a violation of the rules. No worries, even if Big Brother Mu Chen can't take part in the next battle, Big Sister Luo Li still remains, she definitely won't let Ji Xian succeed. Sana comforted everyone. Ling Xi's brows were also slightly knitted at this moment, since she could feel the pressure coming from the super vortex as she looked at the mirror of judgment. Not even a third-grade spirit disaster might be able to escape from that vortex. And Mu Chen's strength was only at the first-grade spirit disaster, the possibility of him making it out was too dim. That Ji Xian is a disaster. Ling Xi's face was cold as a smear of killing intent flashed across her eyes. The entire region went into a clamor at this instance. When the 5 great deans witnessed that scene, Dean Taikang's face was a little dark as he coldly looked at Dean Qianxing, who had a faint smile hanging on his face. Dean Taikang's hands were tightly clenched in his sleeves as he suppressed the rage in his heart bit by bit, since he knew that there was nothing he could do, even if he raged. Although Ji Xian's method was despicable, it was still within the rules. We can only depend on Luo Li, then. Dean Taikang softly sighed in his heart. Fortunately, their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy wasn't fully kicked out. Although they had lost Mu Chen, they still had Luo Li and the girl's background wasn't weak as well. Furthermore, she hid her strength, so there was still a chance for their academy. The Sea of Judgment. When Jing Xian was outside the super vortex as she anxiously looked at it. Not far away from her, Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe stood with faint smiles on their faces as their teamwork this time was perfect. Whoosh! As they smiled, a piercing break of wind came from the vortex, and a silhouette tore her way out, and in a flash, she appeared outside the super vortex. It was Luo Li. Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe were a little surprised when they saw Luo Li making it out, but their expressions remained unchanged as they had already achieved their motive of dealing with Mu Chen. Luo Li. When Jing Xian rejoiced when she saw Luo Li making it out. Rustle. However, Luo Li's face was covered in chill at this moment. She did not reply to Wen Qingxian as she formed sword seals with her hand, and her Luo God sword flew out. 2 extremely sharp sword auras tore their way through the boundless spiritual energy liquid as they flew towards the 2 people. The gazes of Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe changed when they saw Luo Li attacking without any words. They waved their sleeves as boundless spiritual energy swept out, colliding together with the sword aura. Boom! Spiritual energy ripples wreaked havoc as it split the spiritual energy liquid in this region apart. Luo Li's face was covered in frost as she grasped her hand. The Luo God Sword appeared in her hand as she unleashed her powerful spiritual energy. Clearly, she had intended to go all out. Luo Li, do you think that you can confront the both of us with just you alone? Ji Xian spoke in a dark tone as he saw how forceful Luo Li was being. Ha ha, no wonder you are the next empress of the Luo God clan, that's some guts you have there. Xue Tianhe eerily smiled as he looked at Luo Li with mockery. If the latter intended to fight the both of them with her alone, she probably might not even gain any advantage, even though she possesses the Luo God Sword. Luo Li, don't be rash. When Qingxian flew over as she appeared beside Luo Li, holding onto the latter's arm as she spoke seriously, this is not the place to fight. Luo Li's gaze was cold as she stared at the two people. She tightly gripped the Luo God Sword as killing intent was unleashed from her body without any restraints. Luo Li, all sorts of means is allowed in the Sea of Judgment, he can only be blamed for being careless to end up in that situation. When he saw the coldness in Luo Li's pupils, rage rose a little in his heart as he sneered, I'm doing it for his own sake. If he doesn't even have this little mindset, he can only be a small figure, and the path of an expert is not for him. Do you really think that I don't dare to act here? Luo Li's clear ice-cold voice had no emotion as the concentrated cold intent in her voice made the surrounding liquid spiritual energy fluctuate. Ji Xian, if you guys want to fight here, then we'll give it a go. When Qingxian spoke as she made a grasping gesture and a golden war spear appeared. She was also disgusted by Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe's earlier method and adding the layer of relationship she had with Luo Li, when Qingxian would definitely not allow the two of them to gang up on Luo Li. Seeing the posture of the two girls, Ji Xian slightly narrowed his eyes. He was still rather fearful of the two girls before him. If they were to fight in this Sea of Judgment, not a single one of them could escape if they created even more dreadful spiritual energy vortices, and he wasn't willing to halt his steps here. Ha ha, Mu Chen does have some good fortune with girls. Xue Tianhe laughed indifferently, containing a little mockery. Naturally, deep within his mockery, there was the unavoidable jealousy of a man. After all, the two girls before him were so outstanding to the point that even he was moved, and right now they were protecting Mu Chen, which made him feel uneasy. If he is that capable, then let him charge out himself. Otherwise, he won't even have a chance to fight me. Ji Xian faintly smiled as he glanced at Luo Li. If you want to help him fight back, then wait till we're out of the Mirror of Judgment. No matter what you want, I will accompany you till the end. When he finished speaking, Ji Xian no longer spoke any further as he turned around and flew towards the end of the Sea of Judgment at high speed, and Xue Tianhe immediately followed behind upon seeing the former's actions. Seeing the departure of the two, when Qingxian stored her golden war spear as she helplessly sighed, while looking at Luo Li's ice-cold face. Who could have expected Mu Chen's steps to stop here? That fellow, when Qingxian tilted her head as she glanced at the super vortex. The suction force from it made her expression heavy. If she were to fall into it, even she might not even be able to break free. He will break free, Luo Li said softly. When Qingxian bitterly smiled and didn't know how to reply to her. If any of them were to fall into the super vortex, the chances of making it out were too low. Doesn't matter if he can make it out, we should get going, or are you going to let Ji Xian seize the championship? When Qingxian spoke as she looked at Luo Li. Luo Li narrowed her eyes as she looked at the super vortex and nodded her head in the end. Indeed, it wasn't the time for her to stop right now. If Mu Chen couldn't make it out, then she would have to obstruct Ji Xian. Luo Li bit her lips as she loosened her grip on the Luo God Sword, stepping onto it as sword aura whistled, carrying her flying figure out as her long radiant hair lightly fluttered. The scene was extremely gorgeous. When Qingxian also glanced at the super vortex with a complicated look, before following from behind. There weren't any more waves in the Sea of Judgment after that. Although the pressure was getting stronger, the four of them possessed extraordinary strength after all, thus, they were able to endure it. Another 10 minutes passed under the endurance, and a peculiar fluctuation appeared in the chaotic ocean. A lustrous door appeared at the end. Looking at the light door, the four people felt relieved as they finally made it to the end. Otherwise, their spiritual energy might be thoroughly depleted. Whoosh! The four streaks of light flew as they charged into the light door without any hesitation. The mirror of judgment quietly floated on top of the golden battle stage. See. Under the innumerable gazes, brilliant light burst from the mirror of judgment as four silhouettes flew out from the light and hovered in the air. When the four silhouettes appeared, mountain trembling and ocean rolling cheers rang out between the heavens and earth. The whole teams entered the mirror of judgment, and in the end, only four people made it out. Such a cruel competition trembled their hearts. Indeed, Mu Chen isn't here. There were sighs of regret when many people did not see a silhouette amongst the four silhouettes. Who could have expected that a dark horse without any obstructions before him would fall in the end? Next. I'm afraid that it will be the battle of the best four. Countless gazes shot up into the sky, at the four silhouettes that hovered in the air. When they exited the mirror of judgment, their exhausted spiritual energy had instantly recovered. The speed was several times faster compared to before they entered. Clearly, coming out of the mirror of judgment was beneficial to them. Luo Li stood on her sword, and under the earth-shattering cheers, her gaze was fixed onto the mirror of judgment, before she let out a sigh in the end and slowly clenched her fist. Mu Chen, you must make it out. You have waited 3 years for this battle, so you must not be absent. Deep in the super vortex, the spiritual energy liquid was rapidly spinning. The dreadful power of it could even tear a third-grade spirit disaster to shreds. At the same time, there was light being emitted from the depths of the vortex. A silhouette was seen in a seated posture as black lightning was violently flickering on the surface of his body. There were also vague thunderous sounds spreading out. The silhouette that was seated in the super vortex was Mu Chen. Right now, his situation was clearly not optimistic because he had pushed his lightning god's physique to the limits. But even so, he was in a miserable state due to the dreadful pressure coming from all directions. Fresh blood could clearly be seen oozing out from the pores of his skin. It was a sign that his physique could not withstand that pressure. Even with his scepter rune lightning physique, he was having trouble with the energy from the super vortex. Poof! A mouthful of blood spewed from his mouth as fresh blood flowed from the corner of his lips, adding a hint of savage touch to his handsome face. He extended his hand as he slowly wiped the blood off the corner of his lips. His black pupils were filled with a chill. There wasn't the slightest bit of fear contained within them. Indeed, it's a little hard to endure. Mu Chen's voice was a little hoarse due to the terrifying pressure, as if his throat was injured. He slightly raised his head. Every single scene that was captured by his eyes was the liquid form of spiritual energy rotating at high speed with terrifying pressure being emitted from it. He was able to feel the intense piercing pain coming from every single direction of his body, and the sensation was gradually getting stronger, showing that even with the strength of his physique, even he might not be able to last for long. The instant he fell into unconsciousness, he would be transported out of the mirror of judgment and thus, losing his chance to participate in the battle of the best four. It was a situation that he would absolutely not let happen. Since my strength is not strong enough. The youth raised his head. Due to his age, he still looked a little green. However, there was firmness between his brows that was rarely seen on a youth's face. He pursed his lips as he clenched his fist, his gaze also sharpened with a frosted look. Then, let's get stronger. The main reason why he had Luo Li leave first was due to him not wanting her to enter such dangerous grounds, whereas he remained. But he still had other thoughts in his heart. Although the spiritual energy pressure of this sea of judgment was terrifying, it also seemed to be beneficial to his cultivation under that pressure. But, naturally, the requirement was him being able to endure the pain brought from that pressure. In this vortex, opportunity and danger existed at the same time. Using the threat of near-death, person could reach his peak, and at that time, it was naturally the best chance for a breakthrough. Seeking wealth within danger, in this world, there wasn't any strength that came without any price. This was what Mu Chen had always believed. In the spiritual road, the Northern Spiritual Realm and the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, the reason why he was able to stand out and succeed was not because of that so-called talent of his, but sharpening himself through the dangers. Luo Li, I will definitely not be absent this time. Mu Chen lightly smiled and, shortly after, he slowly closed his eyes as both of his hands formed seals, and at the same time, the black lightning that covered his entire body rapidly disappeared. As the lightning disappeared, the torrent of violent liquid spiritual energy rushed over along with dreadful impact. The horrifying pain came, and Mu Chen could feel his body being torn apart by the violent impacts. No matter how intense the pain was, he still retained a strand of consciousness. Black lightning constantly traveled through his muscles and bones as the black lightning, which was pressured by the dreadful pressure to the point that there was nowhere else to go, was forced back into his muscles and bones. As the intense pain continued, Mu Chen's flesh, bones and meridians were getting stronger bit by bit under the refinement of black lightning. The youth sat within the darkness as his body was gradually being covered by the fresh blood that was oozing from his skin, forming into thick layers of dried blood, completely covering him. All sorts of fluctuations were cut off, as if the vitality of the figure within the dried blood was erased. When Mu Chen was engulfed by darkness and intense pain, the atmosphere outside the Mirror of Judgment rose to the limits by the mountain trembling and ocean rolling cheers. Countless people were looking at the four figures on the golden battle stage with excited gazes. No matter how many dark horses appeared along the way, there were only four that were able to stand there in the end. They represented the pinnacle of all spiritual academies. Even if someone had used a method that they did not acknowledge, they inwardly sighed in the end from their strength and talent. Comparing their achievements to many other geniuses, they were dull. Mu Chen actually lost. Outside the golden battle stage, Wu Ling couldn't help sighing as he looked at the four silhouettes on the battle stage with a slightly pale complexion. Behind him, Wu Ying was biting her rosy lips as she had no mood. She was blankly looking at the Mirror of Judgment as if she was expecting something. "Stop looking," Wu Ling bitterly laughed as he continued, "Mu Chen is already very formidable. He was only schemed by Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe. Those two fellows are extremely powerful, and it doesn't matter if they did it intentionally or not, it isn't injustice for Mu Chen to fall for it. Furthermore, Luo Li is still there, and she is not simple. Even I might not be her opponent if we fight seriously. With her present, it will not be easy for Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe to obtain the championship." Wu Ying listlessly nodded her head with a dejected look, causing Wu Ling to roll his eyes upon looking at her. Even when he lost to Xue Tianhe earlier, she didn't look so hurt. Mu Chen. Tang Qian's face turned pale at the region occupied by the Myriad Phoenix Spiritual Academy. She found it a little hard to believe that this youth, who, despite being a little younger than her, was so dependable and never admits defeat, would halt his steps here. Although that youth always had a gentle expression and smile on his face, she knew that it wasn't because he could turn a blind eye to all those setbacks, it was that he could stand up every single time he fell and straighten his body upright. Perhaps he could still smile from this failure, but the thought of that smile made her feel heartache. "Mu Chen, come out, you definitely must." The young girl put her hands together as she prayed in her heart. Up in midair, the five great deans were looking at the four silhouettes that came out of the Mirror of Judgment. Dean Taikeng sighed in his heart as he originally thought that Mu Chen could last till the end and never imagined for such an unforeseen event to occur. Fortunately, at least their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy didn't lose completely, since Luo Li was still present. "Ha ha, 4 deans, now that we have 4 people, I feel that we should begin the battle of the best 4, right?" Dean Qiansheng smiled as he looked at the 4 remaining deans. Dean Taikeng knitted his brows as he said, "Dean Qiansheng, aren't you a little too quick to start the next match?" "Ha ha, what is there to be quick about? Since the results are already evident, are you perhaps waiting for someone to appear?" Dean Qiansheng laughed. "Furthermore, according to the rules, as long as the true champion has yet to appear, anyone that can escape from the Mirror of Judgment can still participate as usual." Dean Taikang understood, although he knew that the chances were small, he was still a little unwilling in his heart. After all, the Great Spiritual Academy tournament this time was extremely crucial to their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. If the champion title falls to the Saint Spiritual Academy again, they would have the qualifications to ascend as the Academy head, and once Dean Tiansheng held the position of Academy head, their academy may be kicked out of the 5 great academies with the excuse of poor results all these years. "Then, let's begin." Dean Taikang had no choice but to nod his head as he had no reason to object at this point in time. Dean Taikang is indeed understanding. Din Qianxian smiled as he looked at the four silhouettes on the battle stage as his thunderous and robust voice rang out between the heavens and earth. Firstly, I would like to congratulate the four of you who were able to ascend to the best four, obtaining the qualifications to fight for the championship of this great spiritual academy tournament. Next up will be the Battle of the Champion. There aren't any rules, it doesn't matter how you fight, the last one standing on the battle stage will become the champion. Russell. Innumerable people broke out into a commotion as their hearts shook. It turned out that there wasn't any lottery to determine their opponents, but having the four of them fight amongst themselves. Were they going for a battle royal? The gazes of those four on stage slightly flickered. My announcement is complete. The main show of the tournament will now begin, the Battle of the Champion. As Din Qianxian finished his speech, everyone could feel the atmosphere on the battle stage instantly tensing up. Everyone widened their eyes as all of them wished to know how the battle royal of those four would end. Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe exchanged a glance in midair under the attention of everyone as they lightly smiled. Both of their figures flashed and landed on a vast battle stage each. Xue Tianhe shot his gaze towards the young girl in midair, who was as cold as snow, and her silvery hair fluttered in the wind as a cold sneer was revealed in his eyes. Blood God Academy, Xue Tianhe seeks the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's guidance. On another stage, Ji Xian lightly smiled as well as he cupped his hands and his voice rang out, Saint Spiritual Academy, Ji Xian seeks the guidance of the Myriad Phoenix Spiritual Academy. Blood God Academy, Xue Tianhe seeks the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's guidance. Saint Spiritual Academy, Ji Xian seeks the guidance of the Myriad Phoenix Spiritual Academy. When the two's voices rang out from the vast golden battle stage, a commotion broke out in this region as innumerable people were startled in their hearts as the scene before them clearly showed that Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe had formed an alliance. Ji Xian versus Wen Qingxian. Xue Tianhe versus Luo Li. The battle formation caused excitement to fill the eyes of everyone as their blood flow increased as well. Right before their eyes, those four were all noble phoenixes and dragons among men. Senior Sister Wen Qingxian, go for it. Defeat Ji Xian. Luo Li, go for it, our entire Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy supports you. Two beauties, go for it. We of the Nine Ridge Spiritual Academy supports the both of you. Our Spring Spiritual Academy as well. An earth-shattering amount of cheers rang out between the heavens and earth. Truth be told, the popularity of Luo Li and Wen Qingxian far surpassed Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe. After all, there were so many spiritual academies here, and aside from the Saint Spiritual Academy and a small number of people supporting the other two, the cheers were basically one-sided for the other party. Clearly, compared to Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe, it undoubtedly felt better for them to support the two pleasing girls. Ji Xian and Xue Tianhe lightly smiled in this situation as they weren't too surprised by the fact that Luo Li and Wen Qingxian were more popular than them. However, the Battle of the Champion was not a competition to compete for popularity. Luo Li and Wen Qingxian exchanged a glance in midair as they both nodded and their silhouettes moved, separately moving towards the golden battle stage of Xue Tianhe and Ji Xian. The two graceful girls stood tall, with one wielding a golden war spear and the other wearing a long sword. Their fine hair fluttered in the wind as they looked extremely gorgeous. The appearance of those two made many others hold their breath. After that, a supportive cheer that was even more startling rang out. Under the cheers, Luo Li was staring at the blood-colored robed figure before her with a little chill in her crystal-clear pupils, pointing the Luo God sword in her hand towards the ground as faint killing intent was emitting from her usual calm expression. Ha ha, seems like your killing intent is pretty big towards me. Xue Tianhe also noticed the killing intent that was being emitted from Luo Li's body as he spoke with an indifferent smile, while his eyes narrowed. Since you have the time to come out from the Blood God clan, then forget about going back. Luo Li's pupils stared at Xue Tianhe as she spoke. Truly worthy of being the next empress of the Luo God clan, that's some tone you got there. A cold sneer lifted Xue Tianhe's lips as he continued, actually, I have a similar intention as well. If I'm able to capture you and bring you back to the Blood God clan, I believe that the Luo God clan can only serve us, the Blood God clan, as their masters. Luo Li's crystal-clear pupils were like isolated lakes, without the faintest ripples. She quietly looked at Xue Tianhe and narrowed her eyes. Buzz. The instant she narrowed her eyes, the Luo god sword in her hands exploded with sky-shaking sword cries as vast sword aura spread out, as if it had engulfed the entire heavens and earth. Creak! Creak! Cracks and marks appeared on the golden battle stage that was extremely firm, which was caused by the sword aura that filled the heavens and earth. Luo Li slightly lifted her hand, pointing the tip of the Luo god sword towards Xue Tianhe. There were faint distortions in the air, as if it was not able to endure the sharpness of her sword aura. Fixing his gaze on the piercingly sharp sword aura emitted from the long sword in Luo Li's hand, Xue Tianhe felt stinging pain on his skin, even with such a huge amount of distance between them. As the prince of the Blood God clan, Xue Tianhe naturally knew how formidable the Luo God sword was. It was the murderous weapon of the Luo God clan. Back then, when Luo Li's father wielded the sword, God knows how many sovereigns of the Blood God clan had fallen under that sword. Although this divine artifact is formidable, I doubt that you are able to unleash all of its power with your current strength, right? Xue Tianhe coldly smiled. Facing his cold smile, there weren't any answers coming from Luo Li. Her narrowed, charming eyes widened in an instant with her hand forming sword seals, stabbing her Luo God sword forth. Buzz! Her stab might seem light, but the impetus behind it made countless people astonished as they saw the piercing sword aura that filled the heavens and earth converged at this instant as it stabbed out along with the Luo God sword, turning into a sword image with the size of roughly 100 feet. With a rustling noise, it tore through space and appeared before Xue Tianhe. Along with the appearance of that sword image, deep cracks appeared on the ground. The surface of the cracks was as smooth as a mirror, instilling fear in those that saw it. Seeing the sword image stabbing towards him, Xue Tianhe's eyes were filled with graveness. Although he didn't mention it, he was filled with fear for Luo Li in his heart. In the current generation of the Luo God clan, this girl was a person that would be shouldering all responsibilities in the future. At that time, she would become the absolute supreme empress of the Luo God clan. Even if he could look at Mu Chen with disdain, he definitely did not dare to belittle the Luo Li that was right before him. Spiritual blood wall. Xue Tianhe's feet tapped on the ground as his figure flew out, rapidly forming seals at lightning speed as he pushed his palm downwards against the empty space of the ground. Boom! The scarlet-red spiritual energy was like a tidal wave as it soared into the sky from the ground, turning into a colossal light screen that was 1,000 feet in size. Rustle. The instant the blood-colored light wall was formed, the piercing sword image was already within reach and heavily slammed against the wall. Boom! Ripples that were visible to the naked eyes were seen spreading out, causing explosions in the surrounding space as the aura rolled in waves. Crack! Clear cracks were seen rapidly spreading throughout the spiritual energy wall as a clear crisp noise was heard. The sword image had already pierced through the powerful spiritual energy wall, heavily slamming against Xue Tianhe's silhouette, which was unable to dodge in time. Boom! Xue Tianhe's figure was sent flying away as he made 100-foot mark on the ground with both of his feet, before he could stabilize himself. His arm was postured in a cross before him, scarlet red in color, similar to heated metals, as peculiar violent energy was emitted from both arms. Drip! On his scarlet red arms, a deep sword mark was present as fresh blood dripped down. The confrontation between the two was only an instant, but the astonishing power that exploded between their counters made every student feel their scalps turn numb. They could sense that even a third-grade spirit disaster would have a hard time resisting that move from Luo Li. Just a single sword move was already so formidable. The supportive shears that resonated between the heavens and earth froze in an instant as many experts felt a chill down their spines as they sensed how sharp and powerful Luo Li's attack was. Amongst the four in the battle stage, Luo Li possessed the lowest fame compared to the rest. After all, Mu Chen had been the one leading their team, and even in the battle of the best 8, Luo Li easily defeated her opponent. Thus, not many people were well aware that despite having a gorgeous appearance and being low profile, she possessed such terrifying strength. When Mu Chen was around, she would naturally suppress her sharpness and become quiet. But the instant Mu Chen wasn't around, she was similar to the Luo God sword in her hand, breaking her seal and unleashing her sharpness that soared in the skies, simply unstoppable. Right now, Luo Li was unleashing her sharpened cutting edge. She was like a blooming twilight flower. Truly expected of the Luo God sword. Xue Tianhe looked at the blood-dripping sword wound on his arm as his expression was terrifyingly dark. Shortly after, he stared at Luo Li and revealed an eerie smile, "But I have done my preparations to deal with you." As he finished his speech, his hand slowly smeared across the sword wound. The scarlet red on both of his arms became darker, and vaguely, blood-colored flames were oozing from his arm. Under the burning blood-colored flames, the sword wound was actually healing at a rapid speed. After the appearance of the bizarre blood-colored flames, blood-red ancient rune actually appeared on both of his arms. With the appearance of those runes, Xue Tianhe's arms swelled up a size with veins wiggling like earthworms, unleashing a dreadful power that instantly exploded. At this instant, not only did his arms look more robust, they looked longer as well. His palms looked as sharp as the palms of a beast, completely unhuman-like. Boom! Xue Tianhe revealed a savage smile as his palm slapped the ground. The scene made everyone dumbfounded as cracks appeared on the extremely firm golden battle stage. The cracks exploded as they extended towards Luo Li. Luo Li narrowed her eyes as she drove her Luo God sword into the ground. Sword aura exploded from the ground as it stopped the cracks, and gold-colored rocks flew out at the same time. She raised her head and looked at Xue Tianhe's arm with a little astonishment. She lightly raised her brows and faintly said, "This must be the low-rank divine artifact of your blood god clan, the blood demon arms, right?" Xue Tianhe did seem to have the knack for it. Judging from the power, he had probably fused the blood demon arms into his own, thus allowing him to fully unleash its power. Although the Luo God sword is powerful, you still can't fully control it. So today, the smile hanging on Xue Tianhe's lips became even more savage and eerie. "I will use these blood demon arms to thoroughly defeat you, the future empress of the Luo God clan." This episode ends here. Thanks you for watching.